Lots of emotions running through all of us as we seem to wake up every single day to something new, something different, some change in our communities, in our houses, in our worlds, in our jobs, in our relationships. And stress is a word that I'm hearing a lot, but it's also a word that I don't find all that helpful because it doesn't really give you direction. And I want to dig into that today because feelings are information, and if we use them as information, they can tell us exactly what we need to do, but we need to be able to identify them. So we're going to get into that today. If this is your first video with me, my name is Stacy Rocklein. I'm a relationship literacy coach, and I help people get closer and more connected in their long-term relationships. So emotions are super important in relationships, and they're fabulous. I mean, they really are these like indicators of what's happening. But stress is a word that we use a lot, and it's really vague if you think about it. I mean, even if you get to the point where you identify like, oh, I'm stressed, like then what are you supposed to do? Just like be stressed about being stressed? It doesn't tell you anything until you dig in a little deeper. And I want to invite you to do that, because when you start to really examine your emotions more closely and you get a more clear idea of what you're feeling, that's the point in time where you can really start to figure out what you need to do. So let's just think about stress for a minute. If you are feeling stress, important first that you're able to slow down and stop and say, hey, I'm feeling something, it doesn't feel good, and you identify stress. Now, you might use that word because you're not sure yet. You might use that word because you haven't done a lot of emotional examination and inquiry. What is the nature of the stress that you're feeling, right? Sometimes you feel stressed because you're just busy. There are a lot of things to do. But when you stop and you look at your list, maybe there's nothing on there that you can get rid of. It's just one of those days where there's like a lot of appointments, a lot of things on the to-do list that are time sensitive. It's just a busy day that can be stressful, but it's really just a matter of when you notice, oh, I'm busy, you just got to put your head down and start knocking those things off the list, right? But maybe your stress is coming from actual like worry, and you're concerned about something, or you're feeling anxious and you're calling it stress. But when you really stop and you look at what you're feeling, you're like, oh, I'm really worried about this thing. This period of time, there's a lot of stuff to worry about, right? There are people that we care about that we're worried about, our health, our financial future, businesses, if you're a business owner, if you're in an industry where people are losing jobs. I mean, there's a lot to be worried about. And so if you identify, oh, I'm worried. Okay, worried is just things that you're thinking, just thoughts, okay? So when you start to actually think, okay, I got to examine my thoughts, you can kind of put them into one of two buckets, things I can do something about, and then go do something about it, right? If you're worried about your finances, get out the numbers, look at the numbers. Do you need to take an action? If you're just kind of generally worried, how are you going to let that go? And, there are all kinds of tools for doing that. You might feel stressed because you feel overwhelmed, right? When you start to dig into it a little bit more, you're like, okay, what is my stress? What is my stress? Well, I'm feeling overwhelmed. When you're overwhelmed, you've got too much on you. Too many things on your plate, or too many things on your mind, too many things that you're concerned about. And that your job then becomes figuring out what you can take off. What can you get off of your plate? Either as a task or as a mental plate or an emotional plate. Like, what can you take off so that you don't feel so overwhelmed? It isn't until you start to really dig in till you can figure out what you're supposed to do. Because if you're feeling depressed, for example, you can be feeling depressed for a lot of different reasons. And it feels really different to have depression that's got a lot of loneliness in it. If you've got a lot of loneliness in your depression, then you're going to need to reach out, find a way to connect to other people, If there's a lot of shame in your depression, that's a different kind of action to take. And we don't really know what to do until we really start to dig into our emotions. Like if you just, instead of thinking of emotions as like they feel good or they feel bad, and you just think of them as information, then it's taking this piece of information and figuring out what to do with it, okay? So there's that reason. But also, when we develop emotional fluency and we can start to talk about our emotions, we start to understand ourselves better. We start to see that the same kind of things show up over and over, right? I used to think that I was just kind of a frustrated person, and then I realized that I have a lot of resentment. Well, resentment is a whole different ball game to deal with as compared to frustration. And I didn't know that until I started to investigate what really am I feeling here. Also, it gives you language to talk to the people in your life about how you're feeling, and then they get to know you better. And you also model how to do that, so maybe they can start to talk about how they feel and you can get to know them better. That's how we build intimacy. Intimacy with ourselves and intimacy with other people. So if you hear yourself saying that you're stressed or some other emotion that isn't very specific and is just making you feel bad and you don't have direction, dig in and see what is it that you're feeling exactly. And if you need help doing that, you can go download a feel wheel. This is a bunch of different emotions. Like if you have trouble identifying emotions, you can get in there and try to figure out like what exactly am I feeling so that you can use that information to move forward. And you can get that at go.stacyrocklein.com/feel wheel. I will put the link in the comments. This is an opportunity, you guys. This is a chance for us to get to know ourselves better and to get closer to the people that we love, especially because we're in real close proximity with some of them, and we'll be reaching out and trying to stay connected with others. So let's use this time for something positive and something good, and to build our relationships, to strengthen them, to deepen them, create new ones, repair them. Let's choose yes on that. Choose this opportunity to pull our people in closer and get closer to them.